I want you to take a second and just picture a dictionary. Seriously, visualize it.
Okay.
If you're like most people, you're probably seeing this massive, dusty book on a library shelf. It weighs about 10 pounds, the print is tiny, and it just feels, well, static.
Yeah.
Like it's some pillar of absolute unchanging truth.
That is exactly the image, isn't it? It's the final word, quite literally. But if you actually look at what's happened in lexicography over the last 20 years, that image is just completely wrong.
Right.
Lexicography, the craft of writing dictionaries, has gone through a revolution. It's honestly comparable to the invention of the printing press. It's not about books anymore. It's about massive computational databases, AI, and, a fundamental shift in how we understand what a word even is.
And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're taking a deep dive into the secret life of words and the tech that wrangles them. We're basing this on a work looking at the computational revolution, and what really struck me is this isn't just about definitions. We're talking about the engine that powers the tools we use every single day.
Right.
Siri, Google Translate, all of that.
Exactly. And there is a central irony, a huge paradox at the heart of this whole story that we really need to get out up front.
I love a good paradox. What is it?
Well, think about the business model. For centuries, it was simple. You compile a dictionary to sell a printed book. That money funds the research. But then, in the early 21st century, just as the technology finally arrived to create, perfect dictionaries using huge amounts of data, the business model for selling those printed books just fell off a cliff.
Right, because no one buys the 10-pound book anymore. We just Google it.
Precisely. So the revenue plummeted, but the scientific capability skyrocketed. We're living in this strange limbo now where the science is light years ahead of what the average person actually sees on their phone or a free online dictionary. The free definitions are often, simplified. They're sometimes even outdated. The real data is sitting in these massive computational engines.
Okay, so our mission today is to bridge that gap. We're going to trace how we went from scholars scribbling on index cards to the systems that teach computers to understand us. And to do that, we actually have to go backward before we can go forward. We have to look at all the baggage we've inherited.
We do. You can't really understand why Siri sometimes gets you wrong today without understanding what was happening in the 16th century.
So let's set the scene. Renaissance. Printing press is the hot new tech. And we have this family, the Estiennes.
The Estiennes, yes. Master printers in Paris and Geneva. This is the early 1500s. And they published these groundbreaking dictionaries for Latin and Greek. Now, this is the crucial part. Because those were effectively dead languages by then, the Estiennes were purely descriptive.
Descriptive meaning they were just documenting what was there, not judging it.
Exactly. They were looking at Cicero, Virgil, and just cataloging the words. They weren't saying, oh, Cicero shouldn't have used that word. The language wasn't changing, so they could just map it.
But then we get to the 17th and 18th centuries, and people start making dictionaries for living languages, Italian, French, Spanish, and the whole vibe shifts.
It becomes incredibly judgmental. This is the era of the academies, the Accademia della Crusca in Italy, the Académie Française in France. Their goal wasn't just to list words, it was to fix the language, to purify it, to stop it from changing.
Which is, as anyone who's listened to a teenager recently knows, completely impossible.
It is. And that brings us to the giant of English lexicography, Samuel Johnson, 1755, the man who basically wrote the English dictionary by himself.
And he started with that same fixer mentality, right? The people who hired him wanted him to stabilize everything.
They did. But Johnson, he was a genius. And over the years he worked on it, he had this huge revelation. He realized that trying to stop a language from changing is like trying to stop people from aging. It's just a natural process.
I remember that quote from his preface. He says that imagining you can embalm a language to secure it from decay is just. It's not justified. Embalm is such a great word there.
It really is. He realized the lexicographer's job is to register the language, to record it, not to police it. And that's really the seed of modern computational lexicography, the idea that language is dynamic, it moves.
But here's the problem, and this is where we get into the tech. Even though Johnson had that realization, the structure of the dictionary stayed stuck in the past. We kept making these books that were basically history lessons, and this leads to what the source calls the camera problem.
And this is a massive issue for AI today. It all comes down to the difference between historical principles and synchronic principles.
Okay, let's unpack that. Historical principles, that's what the Oxford English Dictionary is built on.
Correct. It means you trace the history of a word, You list the oldest meaning first, and then you move forward in time. It's a chronological story.
Which makes perfect sense for a historian. But why does that break a computer?
Okay, take the word camera. If I say I took a photo with my camera, you know exactly what I mean. But if a computer looks up camera in a dictionary based on historical principles, the first definition it sees is not a device for taking photos.
So what is it?
It's a small room, like a camera obscura. Or, even more specifically, the treasury of the papal curia.
The Pope's treasury.
Exactly, because those meanings are centuries older. The meaning device for photography is pretty new, so in a historical dictionary, it's buried at the bottom.
So if I'm building an AI to read the news, and it sees the word camera in an article about a new iPhone,
It prioritizes that first definition. It might think the article is talking about a small vaulted room or the Pope's finances. It just creates enormous noise in the data.
that's a huge problem. It's like giving a tourist a map of London from 1600 and telling them to find the subway.
That's a perfect analogy. And that's why modern applications like natural language processing or NLP, they just can't rely on those old school dictionaries. They need synchronic dictionaries. Synchronic means with time. It's a snapshot of how language is used right now.
So it's prioritizing current usage over history.
Exactly. And to do that, you can't just have a few experts in a room thinking up definitions. You need data. And this led to the next big shift, the data revolution, or corpus lexicography.
Corpus sounds a bit medical, but it just means a body, right? A body of text.
Yes, a corpus is a massive collection of real-world text, millions and now billions of words from websites, books, newspapers. It's empirical evidence for how language is actually used.
And the big milestone here is a project called CoBuild in 1987, led by John Sinclair. This was the moment they stopped guessing.
It was revolutionary. I mean, before CoBuild, dictionary makers would often just invent their examples. They'd write sentences like, "the cat sat on the mat."
We'd always feel a little sterile. Nobody talks like that.
Exactly. CoBuild said, no more. They used real sentences from their database. And Sinclair had this brilliant insight. Every distinction in meaning is associated with a distinction in form.
Meaning that if a word means something different, it usually shows up in a different kind of sentence with different words around it.
Correct. But looking at the real data also exposed a huge flaw in how we think about words. We have this checklist fallacy.
Well, I'm definitely guilty of this.
Yeah.
We think a word has, 3 distinct meanings. Definition 1, 2, 3. Like a checklist.
We do. We think meaning is discrete, like stepping stones. But the data shows us it's much more flexible and overlapping. Take the verb pour, P-O-U-R.
Okay. I pour water, I pour coffee.
Right, so a traditional dictionary might split that into 2 senses. Sense 1, to cause a liquid to flow. She poured petrol from the can. Sense 2, to serve a drink. She poured him a cup of tea.
I can see that. One is just a mechanical act. The other is like an act of hospitality.
But look closer. Physically, the action is identical. You're tipping a container so liquid comes out. The difference isn't the meaning of pour, it's the social context.
Right. You don't pour someone some petrol at a dinner party. Unless it's a very, very strange party.
Exactly. The data shows us these aren't rigidly different meanings. They're pragmatic variations. But traditional dictionaries force them into these little numbered boxes, which confuses both humans and computers. A computer tries to find the hard line between pouring petrol and pouring tea, and it gets lost because the verb is doing the same thing.
It's like we're trying to chop up a river into ice cubes. The flow is continuous, but we just want these nice square blocks for our books.
That's a great way to put it. And because dictionary makers are so obsessed with these blocks, they often miss things entirely.
This is my favorite part, the failures. Because for books that claim to have all the words, they sure miss a lot of them.
It is impossible to catch everything when you're doing it manually. I mean, neologisms, new words, are a total nightmare.
Didn't the OED originally leave out appendicitis?
They did, back in the 1870s. The editors thought it was too technical, just medical jargon that would never catch on.
And then in the 1950s, a dictionary left out brainwash because they thought it was a passing fad.
Seems absurd now, but you see it all the time. Newspapers coin words every day. The source mentions words like giraffishness or spriggly.
Giraffishness.
Ugh.
You know exactly what that means. Just hear it. Awkward, tall, maybe a bit gangly.
Right, you get it by analogy, but a computer using a standard dictionary, it would just return a word not found error. But honestly, the funniest failures aren't the missing words, they're the ghost words.
Okay, you have to tell the story of Dord.
It's a classic. In the 1930s, a major dictionary included the word dord, D-O-R-D, and it was defined as density.
I did pretty well in physics, but I have never, ever used the unit dord.
And you shouldn't. It was a mistake, a typo. The note from the editor was supposed to read D or D, as in capital D or lowercase, the abbreviations for density.
So the typesetter just read D or D and squished it together into dord.
Smashed it together, and it sat there, a ghost word, defined in an authoritative book, for years until someone finally caught the error.
That is incredible. It just goes to show these books aren't handed down from on high. They're made by people who make typos.
They are, but there's a more serious gap than just funny typos. It's the name problem.
Right. Dictionaries love words, but they kind of hate names.
Traditionally, yes. A dictionary will define English as an adjective, but it might exclude England because that's a proper name. They see that as encyclopedic knowledge.
Which feels like a completely arbitrary line to draw.
It is. The source mentioned a dictionary that listed Jesus as a swear word, because that's a usage, but not as the historical figure.
That seems incomplete, to say the least. But why does this actually matter for a computer?
Well, consider the sentence, Auchinleck checked Rommel.
Okay, 2 generals from World War II.
To you and me, yes. But if the computer doesn't have Auchinleck and Rommel in its dictionary as people, as military commanders, it looks at the word checked.
And it might think it means verified, like he checked his paperwork or something.
Exactly, or checked, like in chess. But because they're generals, checked here means stopped, or pause the advance of. The meaning of the verb depends entirely on recognizing the names.
So if your dictionary excludes names, your AI is basically illiterate when it comes to news or history.
Completely. It misinterprets the action because it doesn't know the actors. And this brings us to the future. Because simply listing words, even with better definitions, isn't enough. We need to understand patterns.
This is where we get into the really heavy-hitting stuff. Corpus pattern analysis. This is the real revolution, isn't it?
Right. We're moving away from defining words in isolation. The expert view now is that words don't really have meaning on their own. They have meaning potential.
Meaning potential. I like that. It's like the word is a battery, but it doesn't do anything until you put it in a circuit.
That's a brilliant analogy. And the circuit is the sentence pattern. Let's take the word spoil.
Spoil.
If you look at the raw data, you see these clear patterns. Pattern A, spoil, plus an event. Success spoiled the party. The rain spoiled the picnic.
In that pattern, it means make something unenjoyable.
Right. Then there's pattern B, spoil, plus a human, usually a child. Grandma spoils the kids.
And that means to change someone's character through indulgence.
And pattern C, food, plus spoil, the ham will spoil.
That just means rot.
Exactly. Now, to a computer, those are distinct meanings triggered by the pattern. You don't rot a child, and you don't indulge a ham.
So the future isn't about defining spoil by itself. It's about mapping all these combinations.
Yes. And this leads to something even bigger called FrameNet, which is based on frame semantics. It's the idea that you understand words by understanding the scene or the frame that they belong to.
The source used the revenge frame. Sound like a movie script.
It basically is. To have the concept of revenge, you need a cast of characters. You need an offender, an injured party, an avenger, and a punishment.
And words like avenge, retaliation, get even, they all live inside that specific frame.
They do. You can't really define them without referencing the other parts of the frame. It's a huge leap from those old scientific definitions.
Oh, the spider definition. I love this example.
The spider definition, right. It's the classic example of a definition that is scientifically accurate but totally useless. You look up spider in an old dictionary and it might just say member of the order Arachnidae.
Which is true. It has 8 legs. It's an arachnid.
It is scientifically true, and it's completely useless if you want to understand what a spider is in our culture. It doesn't tell you it spins webs or that people are scared of them or that they catch flies.
Right. If an alien came down and read member of the order Arachnidae, they wouldn't know to scream when they saw one in the bathtub.
Exactly. Modern computational lexicography is trying to capture that whole web of meaning intended, not just the biological classification. We want the computer to know that spiders are associated with webs and fear and Halloween.
So we've gone from Samuel Johnson trying to fix the language to realizing we have to chase it, to now using massive databases to map out these invisible webs of context that make it all work.
That is the journey, from words as items to words as relations.
So let's bring this home for everyone listening. Why should you care about corpus pattern analysis or FrameNet?
Because you are using it every single day. Every time you ask Siri a question or use Google Translate to read a menu or your e-reader suggests a definition, you are relying on these invisible computational dictionaries.
The computer isn't just looking up the word checked or spoil in a list. It's analyzing the pattern. It's looking for the generals. It's looking for the ham versus the grandmother.
It is analyzing the probability of meaning based entirely on context. It's doing what our brains do instantly, but with math and just massive amounts of data.
It's humbling, really. We think of language as this artistic human thing, but underneath, it's all patterns and data.
It is, and it raises a really provocative question to end on.
Let's hear it.
If we now have the data to prove that words don't really have meanings on their own, that pour or spoil only means something in context, then does a dictionary definition actually exist? Or is meaning just a statistical probability?
Oof, that's a heavy thought. Is the dictionary a book of truths or just a book of gambling odds?
I think we're finding out it might be the latter. Meaning is a negotiation, not a rule.
Well, that is something to mull over the next time you look up a word. Thank you for walking us through the revolution.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating world.
And thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next one. Keep curious.